see if we can do it. Good morning. There's two of us today. I'm Tantra Mott. A lot of you know me,
I'm Electra Porzo.
and Electra is the woman who is why the LOC Institute exists. Without her, that would not occur. And we've been hanging out together for 3 days. She's been doing Your Emergent Self, and we wanted to facilitate this call, although we have zero idea what we're going to say. Well, I have a couple of things to say, but about tomorrow. But basically, we don't know what there is to say, except I'm going to now scroll and see if I can find the comments. Let's see. Okay, we're good. I found the comments. We'll just see if any. Oh, there's a Kristen. Okay, we got you.
Good
Good morning, Lisa. Good morning, Gail.
Morning, Gail.
All right, so I was saying to Electra that it always amazes me before I'm in contact with what I call the realms. I try not to be user specific about it because it's more like a hub of interactive, interrelated, and for me, symbiotic communication that used to, in other times of history, used to be of great benefit to human beings. There's such a brain there's a brain configuration that human beings exist in that doesn't have that same intimacy as you would with your children, or you would with your friends, or loved ones, or your clients. But that's not true for me. From the time I was, I think, around 5 years old, when I used to dress the fairies underneath the bushes, I I've had a voice. The voice was very important to me when I was a child, because it kept reporting in on a reality that I wasn't living in. My reality was very violent, and verbally and physically. And but this voice, when I heard this voice, it wasn't relieving me from the condition I was in. It just put me in a different condition than the condition I was in. So over the 70 years of my existence, this capacity to be one with what I call the realms of the beloved, a very specific dynamic of consciousness, regardless of the different variations of beingnesses, perhaps. But it's a consciousnesses that operate on behalf of human beings, specifically, and human beings that are interrelated to this planet and her and the other forms of life here. It's not a savior type of intelligence. It's more of a different kind of intelligence. It's different than the intelligences that work with this intelligence, which carries multiple dynamics of beingnesses. Isn't the same as the intelligences that work with Dom and Her. They work with protect and defend. These intelligences only operate in a different spectrum of existence, where and I love it when my brain starts to interweave with them, because I'm happy and giddy, and I can't remember suffering, and nothing's wrong, and everything's beautiful, and it's just a lovely feeling in the brain. and and of course it informs my personality structure, so my personality is a lot more uh, relaxed and comfortable in its skin, so to speak. So tomorrow from 12 to 6 for those of you that will be there. It's no charge. You will get an email afterwards if you register that gives you the opportunity to make a contribution. But I want to tell you the amusing part of the conversation. I mean, what was amusing? Yesterday, when I went to bed, it suddenly occurred to me it was 6 hours. And I was thrilled about that. It was sort of like getting to go to the park for about 6 hours. And for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, if you go to my website, www.tantramat.com, and you go to events, you'll see it there. I think it's posted everywhere too. I can't remember. That part of my brain is not too functional during these times. But I was laying in bed and I was thinking, wow, this could be a problem for people. It was like, wow, I really hadn't considered that. And then I thought, well, it's just not a problem for me. and I guess everybody will cope, or they won't come. and I had pointedly told Christina not to tell me who's registered, because I didn't want to be in that modality of my existence that where Electra and I, we really care who shows up. We really care if people are contributed to. It really matters to us if somebody doesn't show up that we think could be contributed to by what we each do. But not tomorrow. Tomorrow is a different world. It's just a different world. Good morning, Yvonne. And then I was thinking about vibration, because one of the things said to me, like how it kind of goes is you sort of, this part of your brain webs in, and you don't realize you've been part of a conversation. And they didn't really miss you there, because the part of you that wasn't present is only not present here, but that other part is still present there. So I just really was so happy I was doing that this morning, because I was thinking, okay, I'm in the raw feed, that, this is the best time for me to say anything, because I haven't enculturated it yet. I haven't fixed it in a palatable manner yet. But it was so funny, because as I wove into the chat, you would say, as I wove into it, it's all observation. It's really very interesting. It's all observation, in Electra's and the teachers' work and the institute. When I first taught them, the thing is that observing is everything, and yet it's a source of being. And yet, so with beings that are other frequencies, higher frequencies, they're just observing. And frankly, human beings, because I've been around channels since I was a child, can be quite offended by their observing. But they're just observing, and one of the things I clicked into, translating it into the words that come to me, was I clicked into this curiosity, this observation, because whatever happened during the Mimsy event, those 10 years, whatever happened, it's like if you imagine, there was a great movie, what was the name of it? The Abyss. And there's this scene in The Abyss where he goes down beyond where human beings can survive in the ocean. But this air room opens up with water holding it, and they bring him into that room because he was losing oxygen and everything that happens to human beings at 3 miles down in the ocean. And so he's walking around this room, and all the beings who require the water are in the water engaging with him. It's the best scene ever. And that's what, and so when we first did the Mimsy event, it was like they lifted us up enough and themselves down enough, because Shasta is a hub, and it carries all these portals. And so in Shasta, you can elevate the dimensional state and the dimensional kind of address that you're in. So the first time we went in 2010, it was very clear they'd lifted us up where they could meet us, because they couldn't. It was clear whatever how they calibrate, they couldn't calibrate all the way down into this dimension. And I just find it fascinating that 10 years passed to 2021, and during that time in my brain, I became capable of watching and restoring and building back these matrices that once allowed us to move dimensionally into the different frequency configurations that hold different types of dimensions, of which these beings, we call them the Mimsies affectionately, they titter with that, and yet they're not really tittering the way we titter, and and uh, and so when we went back to Shasta this last time, but even before then, I think, because I don't have much memory, I could tell that these matrices had been restored on the planet that are like that room surrounded by water where human beings could breathe in that case, but it would be like us making a water home for those floating beings so that they could be with us. That's what multidimensionality is all about. It's just about being together. I don't care what everybody else says. It's just about being together. And, it's not about having highs, or it's not about traveling. Good morning, Gail. It's not about traveling out into having peak experiences you can come back and use, so you don't suffer so much here, or so you can escape the illusion for a while. It's not like that at all. It's because we all were once home together in our different configurations of flesh and spirit, or matter and energy. So what I said, and what I said for people that interact with me more than I'm interacting with most of the world right now, is that it's as you can tell these dimensional matrices are reestablishing themselves as part of the third dimensional capacity, and the third dimension is reestablishing itself as part of the higher dimensions and lower dimensions, because remember, intelligence isn't a matter of anything other than everything being connected to everything else, everything part of everything else, everything being related to everything else, and yet everything having its own place. Like it wouldn't have worked well for the man with his helmet off to have the water come in on him and try to communicate with creatures. So I realized that I know, because the lector's here, I know I'm not a club of one, but I might be a club of two.
Yes.
Or we might be a club of two. And I know there's at least three. And because I know who the other one is. But I'm so excited because when my brain was weaving in, and all of you can do this. All of you, good morning, Beryl. All of us can do this. Just sit there, and when you go to think about communicating with God or Jesus or an elemental or a being from another galaxy, notice what your brain does. Does your brain go out there, or does it stay here? It's a very simple question. And so we've been going out there And I've had several clients that have said they've lost touch with uh, their out there being. And I said, why don't you see if they're not standing beside you? And I actually mean that. I'm actually not silly about these things. It's just easier to be alive when you're connected to everything and everything's connected to you and you're part of everything else and you're in relationship with everything else and everything's in relationship with you. And it's just impossible to suffer when you're connected. It's just impossible. So I'm getting kind of a brain bath, and I haven't said what they were observing when my Methuselah brain clicked into everything. Um, but it set the tone for tomorrow and the curiosity. Oh, the one phrase like a question, but it's not a question. So if you ever asked a question, it immediately makes the other person think. And that's what it's like when you're engaging with realms beyond um, what most human beings consider the norm, which is pretty pathetic. And the so what it's like when they ask a question, it's more like what we call rhetorical. But when they ask the question, it stimulates, if you're listening to the question, it stimulates, kind of like, And it's kind of the easiest way to say it. So the curiosity said, the inquiry, I'm trying to get this out my mouth, but I'm trying to frame it before I can do it. Basically was that, wasn't it curious, of course this uses my frame, but wasn't it curious that so often when human beings have a high frequency moment that the next few days are overwhelmingly miserable. They don't look so good. They didn't say it the way I said it, but I was kind of looking through their perception.
Okay.
And the other thing was this kind of clouds, these dark clouds in the human psyche. If that means our brain, not our brain, because that's the only interactive relationship we have with the greater powers and forces of creation. We get connected through our solar plexus, but the metacognition comes through our capacity in our brain. And so they were just kind of observing these kind of dark clouds, not really the storm clouds, but more like the gray clouds that, just are somewhat full of stuff, but not as much as the really dark, ugly ones. And just observing this condition in the human brain. And the brain means this brain. It's the halo brain. It's not just the pulp brain. And just kind of an inquiry about being engaged about that. So then what that let me know is tomorrow that, and it's so interesting because I'm so clear that it doesn't really matter if anybody's there. I don't know if it matters if anybody even enrolls. I really don't know. It's like that thing where there's a space and time. It's a hell space and time for 6 hours to engage directly.
Yeah.
And because they can't hold in this time very long and we can't hold in their time very long. And the fact it's 6 hours is exciting because that's a fairly long piece of time for the temporal plane and the larger timeline planes to come together as one. It's what they used to call a holy moment in some traditions. So I got the setting for tomorrow, and the setting will be this engagement about these odd clouds in the human psyche that seem to have them not be able to stay happy. And then the other thing because they were going through my head, is also noticing that when people open up into these larger dimensional playing fields, the the sense, the historic, the parts of the human memory that can't get past. Um, I don't know how to put it. I'll know better tomorrow because right now I'm trying to stay. I have to drive, so right now I'm trying to stay fairly functional. I won't have that problem tomorrow, but but there's something about what human beings can't not think, and something about so the whole day tomorrow, in literally connected to the entire human consciousness, they're going to be seeing what they can do about that. That's it. I mean, that's it. I mean, that's it. And we'll only know if they can do something about that if something happens. We'll know. So then you can blame them and not yourself. That also confuses them terribly. The human blame of one's own condition, they find puzzling. It's a little bit like having a bit of a stomach ache when you feel it for them. And it really took something. It took 10 years to, I think, my point of view, is it took 10 years for them to be able to come into kind of a less debris field in the environment that we have been being, and the environment that we have set up for them. And it all really crystallized when we set the date, after the date that they had set got missed. That's where it all crystallized. It all crystallized because we generated our desire to keep our date with them. And that desire is very, very not common in human beings. The type of dimensionalities that human beings have been operating in is the save me from myself dynamics. And so this God saved me, Jesus saved me, Buddha saved me, Muhammad saved me, karmic, isn't where they come from. They come from more like kin, more like we're all hanging out together on behalf of the joy and bliss and wonder and awe of this planet. And it isn't like my assertion is that what will happen tomorrow, it's called, some terminology we call set the field, that somehow tomorrow a field will be set, a little bit like an immersion in the three-dimensional playing field, particularly where it's collapsed. So it just stays immersed in this sort of what I call this energy of paradise, so that it can, so in that immersion, these sort of debris, dark cloud consciousnesses can dissolve. That's my sense of it. So how I'm going to start it, I'm going to do my best to do it this way, and then it may not go this way at all, of course. But how I'm going to start it is, I gave them my thinking, and they gave me their thinking. And so we're going to try to topic it, them and me. So I'll try to set up an hour at a time so people can come in and out as they wish. And then probably take a 20-minute break after an hour, and then everybody come back, or everybody say hi, or sit there and stare at each other and share for 10 minutes. If I noticed the last I did, it was a very large deer in headlight operation.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that's the other thing that is accumulating now, is human beings are at the border of their mind. So they're either going to not be able to think, or they're going to be deer in headlights, or they're going to for a while, there's a sort of devolve, a maybe like a devolving back into thinking that doesn't have to be thought anymore because the neural webbing doesn't know where to go to think right now. But it will pass. It will pass. So let me turn it over to you for anything you have to say that you can think of.
Well, one of the things I'm present to is that when you said that the Mimsies were starting to talk to you, I started feeling a different pressure in my brain. And as you're talking, I'm feeling another energy moving through. So I know that you hold it. And I'm just wondering if, like, sometimes even when we're in video, I can have the experience or the visceral experience or kinesthetic experience of being in that same experience. Like right now I'm sitting next to you, so I think it's just kind of oozing through me or into me. And I'm just hoping that can happen. And my sense of it is like the oxygen room for the guy in the bottom of the abyss. We're holding that matrix. And my experience in working with, and all the work I've done, is that matrix doesn't really depend on location of your body. And so
They love the idea of Zoom, even though it's not the terminology they use. Because do you all have any idea how much easier it is to interact with the electromagnetic field that you exist in than it is to exist in the density of a human body? Good point.
yes. Yeah. So anyway, that's what I would say to everybody is just imagine themselves in the matrix of the oxygen room.
That's great. We'll set it up that way.
Yeah.
We'll
And
set it up.
that gives me chills. And that way, anyway, I think more can happen that way when you just say, yeah, that's what I'm in, you know.
Yeah.
And then allow it to be okay that, I guess the first thought was that you don't have a brilliant thought, you know, because I think sometimes people don't talk because they think, oh, this is only what I'm experiencing. It isn't something, huge. And I think this matrix is connected by more people lighting up with what is present for them and, it isn't huge or it isn't phenomenal or whatever, because you don't know. I think that's the big deal.
Just get your mouth open.
Get the mouth open, because it's like, for me right now, as soon as I started talking, the sense of the energy in me normalized. And
Well said.
and that's what, not just for this call on the Mimsy, but I really noticed it on the iMagi. If they'd opened their mouths, things would have been different. Other things would have happened. But we have all these judgments or, I don't know, interpretations.
I also think that people don't know how to talk when they don't have thought.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I actually I used to do a lot of landmark education, and I still do it to this day. I just raise my hand. And then I just trust the leader to call on me or not, because I don't know what I'm going to say until I'm called on. But it really matters. What human beings don't realize is in the thought patterns, this is great what she just said, when the thought patterns that human beings just need to speak inside of, they need to be knowledgeable. And what Electra said is completely accurate. I mean, they're both and so how are we going to share or ask questions when we're not knowledgeable, when we're ignorant? How do we do that? The other thing that happened on the iMagi call, for those of you who were there, was the three conversations carried a much larger consciousness of awareness and being. And what happens, like one of the things Electra was saying to me is she often doesn't, telling on you, It's a requirement. But she often doesn't share because the registers people have don't match the consciousness that she's sharing from. But if some of us don't start doing that, as you notice, I don't have that. I'm not tongue-tied in that area. If because the engagement's not with with the capacity of the person to understand. The engagement is being part of the mind of creation itself, and that if human like people used to, when I first started my work, people would say, "Oh, human beings won't even be interested in what you're doing," which is what I think right now, actually. But I'm fine. I'm quite interested in what's happening. But because and you need to dumb down for them, and I'm like, up yours, because that's not who I know human beings to be.
Mm-hmm.
And now here I am, 55 years later, and the quality of engagement I get to exist in. And so to have that group of people, and I imagine literally tongue-tied and not even able to push star two, is quite impressive because they have worked at getting past borders of self. Wow, don't I'm not using that word. Sorry. There's another engagement going on here, and for them, they think that word's fine, or it might have been Tobias, and then we're really in trouble. But I'm not using that word. Self-degradation. I'll use that word because the other word was not going to work well. And this sense of self is it degradation?
Degradation's the word. Yeah.
So sorry, another word was coming in. I'll tell you later.
Oh, okay.
And
I'll tell you too if you want to know sometime.
We've had a great time.
Yes, we have.
But this self degradation that occurs triggers the higher the frequency base occurs, because it's just like when we teach the creation exercises. It's not that you're stupid, it's just your brain, your neural wiring has never gone any further than the front steps for the most part.
Yeah.
And it's like that baby that doesn't want to step down that first step. It looks too high, and you're afraid you might fall. But the exciting part is we are at that border. We actually are at the border of the metacognition of the human mind.
Oh,
and
yes.
and it and I guess maybe people being not able to talk for a while because the neural function is having to sort itself so it can return to its unified field of its mind of creation. But it's a very exciting time. It's very exciting. It is. I'm deeply appreciative of people who've been there for me financially. It's really helped me get through this hub, this moment of time, because I won't back down. If I have to live out of my car, I'm good. I'm telling you. I can't remember the word I used about myself to Electra. Anyway, whatever that is, I really am that. And, I just won't be stopped because I know paradise. And I know it's leaking through the morbidity of a collapsed field. And it's just like the Grand Canyon. The rock in the Grand Canyon couldn't stand against the water trickling through it. And it's the same with higher frequency. It's same with places that just dimensions of consciousness where these states of being occur, where it just makes you smile. It just is devoid of, I never know how to put that phrase together. It's devoid of the belief and the experience of not that, I think would be what I would say. So over to you again. See, now she has to talk because she now doesn't want anybody not talking on the calls. So she's doing you and herself at the same time.
Aren't you just a cute little thing?
I am so cute. So did you hear what she did? She said, She relaxed, she listened, and now she's going to say something. And I bet she doesn't know what.
I don't know what.
Yeah.
And I know what you really mean about raising your hand and just waiting for the moment for what comes to be asked. It isn't, it's not a preformed thought, but I think I think it's the, okay, I'm open to the moment. So I'm present to what I'm being present to at the moment. Sometimes I think that the question gets inserted that needs to be asked. I'm like, okay, if that's the question I'm asking, that's cool. And because it really feels like a fluid field of flow that goes between me and the other dimensional beings. And as long as I keep my mind or my mouth open to the flow, then it's sort of like a nice infinity loop, and it goes back and forth. And I learn more when I have not preformed the question than if I simply start speaking. It's almost as if, like, I'm getting this feeling in the middle of my heart and going like, it's like the question that I didn't know to ask was waiting for me to open my mouth so that the question could be asked.
Yeah. Technically, it's so interesting. We're just completing this book called You as the Mind of Creation.
Mm-hmm.
And technically, that's what we are. We are the mind of creation. It's a personality framework that doesn't have us realize we are the mind of creation. And you know how often, I mean, when somebody says, I don't know where that came from, because it didn't come from what you consider you. But the truth is, the more and more metacognitive we get, the more we become part of the greater realities of which we're a part,
Yeah.
the more we will just be the mind of creation, minding the mind of creation, enjoying the awareness of what is occurring there. So that phrase I use is where creation reflects upon itself, gaining knowledge and recognition of itself through its multidimensional, multisensory, multi-intelligence, we often refer to as a human being. And that's really what we are. And I gotta say, I never thought from the age of 3, all the years I've worked, that I was going to get to have this experience of the multidimensional matrices, of the realms of beingness that this planet is a home for. It's not just a home for human beings. It's a place that multidimensional natures of being engage with each other in physicalness and non-physicalness. She's a genius planet. She's a remarkable intelligence. And the interesting thing is that she remembers. She won't ever forget. And we are in the process of that memory being restored in us. Not whatever happened here. I mean, more than likely what happened here is something not of the realm of unity, something that needed to maybe feed off this planet for a while, got inserted here in some manner. And, human beings were very, as we know them, were very young as a species then. And I don't know if it's the same exact phenomenon as when a young child's raised by a brutal parent or parents, or in a brutal society. It's hard for the child to remember the original nature of their original design or the original nature of the original design here. But a huge amount of us and humanity have been fighting to get back to what we remember our design to be. And given that that design is coherent, cohesive, and congruent with the paradise that this planet continues to evolve as, there's no way whatever got in here temporarily will be able to exist here forever. It just can't. And our ability, maybe we just need to return to that state of being while everything else sorts itself out. At least that's what I think. That's how I'm operating. How about y'all? All right, over to you, and then we'll close because we're walking out of this place that we enjoyed.
Yes, we stayed at a really nice Airbnb. Um, I hold the same as you do, that it's changing. There is no, there, it just, I don't, it's all in me. And it goes like, oh, of course this isn't going to last. Of course something's coming back in. I can feel it. And sometimes it comes in like feather fingers into a room. Most of the time it's just changed the atmosphere. I think humans can believe the old stuff if they want to, but if they pay attention, they can see it's changing. And you hear that all over the place.
Yeah, we do.
People saying that it's changing.
We do.
And just, yeah, just being it, welcome it. It's cool. Incidentally, this program I just did is really cool too.
We had fun.
We did.
All right, I may see you all tomorrow, I may not. I know that some of you have purchased it and will watch it later. I'm really glad I had today with you all because with the shared field because I got to sort of set the field for myself for tomorrow. See you later.
Bye bye.